Welcome to Wellness is a Way of Life, the podcast for female leaders seeking sustainable energy, clarity, and confidence. I'm Megan Swan, your guide on a journey to mastering wellness as an integrated part of your life. Let's explore personalized wellness strategies that truly resonate with who you are. In case you hadn't heard, my new book is out. It is called Marinating in Chaos. Live intuitively and make bold, authentic decisions. This is part memoir, part roadmap for women who are serious about getting healthy for good, not just for a season. It's about my journey. I set out at 30 on my own twisted eat, pray, love journey, Latin style, where I ended up living as an expat in Mexico for 15 years. This story, it's for women who are tired of feeling tired and deep down know there is an inner fire just waiting to be lit. I take you on a comical, vulnerable, and relatable journey from party girl looking to escape negative narratives on replay to the empowered wellness leader that I am today, looking to change how women everywhere view themselves. So this book is for all women who quite simply are ready for something more. And I'm guessing if you're listening to this podcast, you already deeply resonate with that. And I can't wait to hear what you think about the book. If you do, I will share all the places you can buy it. If you do me the honor of purchasing a copy, leaving a review is one of the most powerful ways that you can support me, if that seems in alignment for you. I'm going to read a sample, chapter 1, coming at you. And let's just say it's a juicy, juicy story. So let's dive in. Chapter 1. The DJ is my guru. Once upon a time, I was a girl turning 30 who knew she was meant for more. Maybe it was my obsession with Elizabeth Gilbert's Eat, Pray, Love, which, by the way, the book was so much better than the movie. Or maybe it was what that DJ said to me in Puerto Vallarta that helped me remember some inner knowing I had buried under the recent list of broken heart experiences. Needless to say, I was deeply inspired by the last passage in Gilbert's book. Quote, "If you're brave enough to leave behind everything familiar and comforting and set out on a truth-seeking journey, either internally or externally, and if you are truly willing to regard everything that happens to you on that journey as a clue, and if you accept everyone you meet along the way as a teacher, and if you are prepared most of all to face and forgive some of the most difficult realities about yourself, then the truth will not be withheld from you." End quote. Also, I was deeply fucking fed up with my life. Specifically, all the things that were not working in my favor at the time. My life wasn't shaping up to what I had hoped, to say the least. I had many little coping mechanisms, of course, that were keeping this hard truth at bay, and I realized that the time was now to go and, quote unquote, find myself, as they say. Among other things, I had been trying to find a good job in the non-for-profit industry in Toronto without much luck. At the same time, I was increasingly disillusioned by how non-for-profits were run and pretty certain it wasn't the line of work I had imagined for myself. Quite the conundrum. Sometimes not getting what you want is actually a gentle whisper from the universe. Not that way. Secondly, I was still in love with a guy who needed space and time to figure out what he wanted. Mind-blowing sex can cloud a girl's judgment, am I right? Obviously, he just wasn't into me and I knew it, but, well, we'll get into that later. Basically, I scared the shit out of him more than once with my wild, crazy, and often intoxicated behavior. I know. Well, I didn't know, but now I do. I digress. I think even then, That my ex's resolve to do only what felt aligned for him was admirable to me, but extremely elusive. At that point, I still struggled with respecting the boundaries of others and myself. What the fuck were they, and why would anyone hold back? What was the point in self-restraint? I didn't really know who I was or what I wanted. I had been chasing societal prescribed dreams and fantasies my whole life, and I was still making fear-based decisions. I didn't just randomly set off to Mexico, though. I had been invited by my mom and stepdad to join them for a week in Puerto Vallarta. Looking back now, I see how ungrateful I was the whole time. To be honest, it makes me a bit ill to think about that phase of my life, operating in low-level depression that was mostly managed with a lot of drinking and dark sarcasm. I was ungrateful, bitchy, and judgmental about everything. I was not capable of taking ownership of my inner state. It felt dark and juicy, just being there, sitting in it, marinating in my victim mentality, taking responsibility for nothing and being offended by everything. Ah, your delicious 20s. Although this trip did cue some sort of tripwire, and I remember that I had had a strong inner voice whispering, there's more to life. The whisper of intuition, you know? One night, my mom's dear friends, a pair of fabulous gay silver foxes, who were much more in tune to the nightlife, took me out for drinks and introduced me to the locals. A margarita led to tequila shots, and then I was heading out with the gay bartender to watch his drag show at another club, and then go dancing with him to another party, and then another. The gay bartender's name was Chewy, and I don't remember much, because, well, alcoholism. But he took me to a club that changed my life. It was empty of people, but filled with music I loved. I remember feeling so drawn to the winding saxophone in the techno song, and I couldn't help but dance. The song was Infinity by Guru Josh Project, and it became my theme song for the year, or arguably the decade. The DJ even came down to dance too, and after a bit, he came in closer to me and said, I love how you dance. More people should dance like you. Like what? I asked. Like no one is watching. This compliment lit my heart up because it reminded me of who I was before all the bullshit with my first husband. Oh yeah, I had one of those not well thought out nuptials in my 20s. It reminded me of a moment at a rave many years earlier and a feeling deep down that everything was going to be okay and that my life was just beginning and full of possibilities. It was freeing and empowering. So I ended up falling kind of in love with this DJ, not really him as a person, but rather his free spirit and appreciation for the little things in life, which much later I came to understand is part of the culture here in Mexico. Here, they live in the moment, go with the flow, and are much more resilient to accepting setbacks or changes to the plan. This DJ was one of my teachers along the way, and he's still a distant friend. He was also an anchor, an excuse to get back to Mexico and see where the path might unfold. It felt as though I was always being pulled back to Mexico. It didn't make any sense, but the inner certainty was there. Plus, I love crazy ideas. So after a soul-riveting week in Puerto Vallarta, I returned to Toronto and started the process of shifting into nomad mode. Precisely because most other people thought it was a crazy idea, I was clear. I wasn't made for or interested in the standard plan, the classic career model, the 9-to-5, the corporate climb. No, thank you. I had become a certified yoga teacher and was teaching part-time in Toronto. I didn't think I was going to teach yoga for the rest of my life, but it was definitely a way to feel more aligned, as they say. Yoga had become my new healthy addiction. Well, I mean, I was sweating out what I had consumed the night before, so I felt like totally healthy. But was I capable of being an actual professional yogi? Meh. I had a strong sense that I needed to go travel. Yoga and travel sort of go hand in hand. And besides, now was the best time. I had no ties, no kids, and no real responsibilities. So I signed up for a quick 1-month certification course to be an ESL teacher, gave notice at my job, and finished up my obligation so I could exit the country with purpose and be on my way. I sold most of my things, including my prized BMW, and put a lot in storage, which, looking back, I wouldn't do again. Just get rid of your stuff. The plan was to rent an apartment in Puerto Vallarta for a month. My stunning villa was half the cost of the rent I had been paying for a tiny basement in Toronto. I also planned to sign up for Spanish lessons, and a big part of my plan was to get away from all the noise of other people's opinions and the oftentimes very boring Canadian narrative of things I should do and career paths I should take. I was also in this first month that I met Felipe. He became another one of my teachers along the way. He was 18. Oh, yes, he was. Pretty sure anyway. He was mostly gay, but sort of bi and full of energy, awe, and wonder. Felipe lived in Monterey. He was a university student at Tec de Monterey and a songwriter. Did I mention he wrote me a song? Felipe taught me that you can't put a price on experiences. He taught me how kind, tender, and vulnerable men can be, and that this isn't a weakness. I later came to appreciate this was just a part of Mexican culture. Still, he was a special one. Felipe's open-mindedness inspired me. He helped restore my self-confidence, heal, and offload a lot of toxic baggage I was carrying around from my first marriage and previous relationships. After a month, I went back to Toronto for a couple of weeks for an official goodbye party. I flew back to Mexico with no intention of returning to Canada anytime soon. I was officially on my own eat, pray, love journey. My loose plan was a year in Mexico, a year in Bali for more yoga and spiritual endeavors, and then I'd see where the universe would take me. Everyone thought I would be back by Christmas or that I had simply lost my mind. I flew directly to Monterey. First, I went to Zacatecas, Guanajuato, and Querétaro. In Zacatecas, I learned that it snows in Mexico and that I should have brought socks. In Guanajuato, I stayed at a hostel and met a lovely Jewish gay man from Los Angeles. His family had fled his Mexican town when he was little. This was my first lesson on how conservative and largely homogeneous Mexican culture is. It's 90% Catholic and very conservative. A stark contrast to its also relevant but highly stereotypical Latin culture with its obsession with sex appeal and celebrating everything in a big, big way. We hung out and toured together. He had a wealth of information in terms of the historic significance of the town and the patriotic parade we witnessed on the 28th of September. In Querétaro, I found a Spanish school that a traveler in Monterey had recommended. This school was owned by a couple who are, to this day, good friends of mine. They've been very successful at putting their school online and now teach more than a dozen languages in even more countries. They met in the Peace Corps. He is Filipino American and she is Mexican. She was an excellent Spanish teacher and helped me gain leaps and bounds in Spanish. I love meeting people who are successful outside of the 9-to-5 grind. If you can dream it, you can make it work. I stayed in a hotel that was actually a big estate with rented rooms. My room was simple and clean, and it opened up to a giant garden where I could read and study for hours at a time. The bathroom had tiny bars of soap that smelled like roses and reminded me of my grandmother. After several weeks, I coordinated to meet up with a friend I had met while working for a think tank that specialized in genocide prevention and awareness back in Toronto. Carlos was his name, and he had since relocated to a beautiful city called Morelia. He was a highly respected anthropology professor, a specialist on the Armenian community in Mexico. I was excited to meet up with someone from my life before my Eat, Pray, Love adventures had begun. Carlos suggested that first I travel by bus to meet him in a town called Uruapan in the state of Michoacan, one of the states where it is recommended that travelers avoid it entirely because it is run by the cartels, although I didn't really know what that meant at the time. Either way, I was going to meet up with a local, so all good, right? From there, we would go to Morelia, where Carlos lived, for a film festival, and he would accompany me to Mexico City to show me some of the most important archaeological sites. He had explained all of this in a quick email. When I got off the bus, Carlos was right there, excited and in a hurry. "My daughter was just born," he exclaimed. "I need to get back to the hospital." I had no idea that he had a partner or that they were expecting. How could he have said that this was a good time to come? "It is the perfect time," he smiled. "We are going to my in-laws' ranch, and they grow avocados. It is beautiful. You will love it. When we get there, my wife can rest with the new baby. Her whole family is there, and we can tour around some of the sites." Okay. This felt like a massive imposition. But the way he communicated the plan with such clarity was hard to argue with. It felt awkward at first, but quickly thread into a sense of the more the merrier, and many hens make light work. Now, after a decade of living here, I know the cultural dynamics much better. Carlos's wife had the help she desired from a close network of female family members. The men were not too actively involved except to keep the household running and to feed themselves. In Mexico, women largely take the first 40 days after baby arrives to cocoon, connect with their baby, rest, recuperate, and isolate. In fact, many countries do this. Others send women back to work after 6 weeks. After a week at the ranch, we went to their home in Morelia to get it ready for the baby. This included helping paint the nursery with pink and purple flowers. I felt I was finally able to contribute something meaningful. But wait, you want me to just paint on the white wall? No stencils? No plan? You understand I'm not an artist, right? "Just go for it," he said. "Why not?" Carlos taught me to focus on what you can do within your means, which is the right side up of the tortilla, and to enjoy life. I was always so surprised in every part of Mexico how welcoming people were and how relaxed they all seemed. 15 years later, I have a more in-depth, nuanced understanding of the surface layers of the culture, but on the whole, Mexicans are extremely warm, generous, and welcoming to everyone. Soon after, I carried on with my way and went back to Querétaro, which at the time felt like a home base. I wanted to be there for the Day of the Dead because my new friend Laura was doing a big tour and cultural lesson on the history and associated traditions. We went to Pátzcuaro for the day, which is an island in the middle of a lake where they decorate every single grave. The town has extremely important cultural significance. Visitors go to the town at night in small boats lit with candles. It's an epic adventure. During this time, I had been looking for an English teaching job, but had yet to find one that allowed me the freedom to travel. I eventually came across an interesting ad on Dave's ESL Cafe, if you know, you know, for a small school in Chiapas run by 3 guys from Portland. I had always loved our family camping trips along the Oregon coast as a child, and it seemed like it might be a sign. I mentioned the option to my new friends, and they had actually lived for several years in San Cristobal de las Casas, or San Cris as the locals say, a nearby town. They highly recommended the experience, so I scheduled a Skype interview, remember Skype, with the director of the school, Tobin. I really liked his vibe, and the job started in a month, which left me the perfect amount of time to tour Cancun, Tulum, Mérida, Campeche, before ending up in the heart of Chiapas. Arriving a day before I needed to start, a guy named Will was there to pick me up and show me my bare bones apartment on the top floor of the school. I had the entire floor. It was all concrete. What the heck? Lots of windows, though, and a nice balcony overlooking onto a small street. I could hear the squeaking of the tortilla machine outside. There was a view of a big, beautiful hill in the distance. I quickly learned the ropes and made friends with other teachers, Jessica and Flossie. Jessica immediately told me she was looking to offload one of her private English students so she could take another job in the mornings. "He's a doctor," she said, bouncing her eyebrows up and down. Jessica gave me the doctor's number, and I agreed to call him to arrange our first English lesson. It seemed like a no-brainer to make some extra cash to save up for my weekend trips to San Chris. Who would have thought that is where he would one day propose? Thanks for tuning in to Wellness is a Way of Life. Are you ready to make wellness a natural part of your routine? Let's stay connected. Go to meganswanwellness.com. Until next time, live well and thrive.